All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Nathan Smith, and I'm the Digital Programming Coordinator here at the Central Arkansas Library System. Thanks so much for joining me. Before we get rolling, let me go ahead and just get a couple of quick things out of the way so we can make sure that those get addressed. Let's see, give me just a moment. Actually, I'll be right back. All right, great. Okay, so a few quick preliminary things. First of all, if you have questions, just speak up and let me know. Don't worry if it's kind of a silly question or a little off topic or any of that stuff. None of that worries me. I am much more concerned about making sure that you are getting a lot out of the class, that you're learning useful things about technology. After all, that is the point of a technology class. So if you have questions at any point, don't worry about whether it's an interruption. Don't worry about any of that kind of stuff. I'm certainly not going to judge you on the quality of the question or whether whether that's a silly question or any of that kind of stuff. That's not what I do. We're all at different levels. We all have different sets of skills. So don't worry about that at all. How do you ask those questions? Well, if you're joining me here in Zoom, what you'll want to do is look down at the bottom of your Zoom window and check for a little button that says chat there. Click on that chat button, and then you should see the chat, little chat box either over on the side, or it should pop up in front of you, and you'll be able to type your questions in there and ask them right away. Speaking of the chat, I'm also going to go ahead and drop into the chat and the all of the sort of live stream stuff, the link to our example files that we're going to be using today, because we are going to be using example files that you can follow along, so that you can follow along with me, and you don't have to write your own, because that would just be a waste of our time. So I'm going to drop that in the chat. It's cals.click/word2files. So that's going to show up in the chat box. You can click on that link, go ahead and download those example files if you want to follow along. If you're watching after the fact, then same deal. Cals.click/word2files. You can go there, download the example files, and you can follow along. If you are here live and you want to watch now and try to follow along later, it's going to be on the Cal's YouTube channel, where I'm live streaming right this moment. So you'll be able to get to follow along with those example files later on if you want to rewatch. Okay, let's see. Okay, if you are joining me in Zoom, but you're on a mobile device, rather than looking at the bottom of the screen there in your Zoom window, what you'll need to do is tap in the middle of your screen in the Zoom app and look in the corner somewhere. And there in the corner, you should see, whoop, okay. There we go. Silly camera. Okay. That was a mistake. Should have just left it alone. Anywho, look in this in the corner, and you will or tap in the middle of the screen, look in the corner. You should see a thing that says more, and then you can tap on that, and you should see chat as one of the options there, and then type in your question. Finally, if you are watching on one of the live streams on Facebook or YouTube, on Facebook, you'll just want to use the comments just like you would on any other Facebook post on all of Facebook. If you are watching live on YouTube, you'll want to look over to the right of me, and you should see the live chat. You can type your questions in there. And if you post your questions on Facebook or YouTube, I will see them there as well. So yeah, you're good to go. Let's go ahead and fire up the screen sharing, and we will talk about what we're going to do today. So there you are, Word. Okay, great. All right, so screen sharing's on. We're good on that. Basically, what we're going to do today, we're going to cover three major topics. The first topic is going to be formatting and themes, or style sets and themes. Basically, we're going to talk about how to format your document so that it's easier to read and it is more appealing to your audience, and just how to make your document look better and be easier to get around in. So that's the first thing. There's a whole system in Word for that. It's really cool. So I'm excited to show you that. The next thing that we're going to talk about is tools for collaboration and review. So we're going to talk about some things that you can do to work with someone else if you're creating a document, in concert with other people, or kind of editing tools, so you can edit for someone else or they can edit for you in creating the document. And then finally, we're going to talk about mail merges. Mail merges, I mentioned this briefly yesterday, are basically they're a way to sort of make a personalized version of your document for each recipient. And that's pretty cool. By the way, I did say yesterday, if there's anyone here, I don't think there's anyone in Zoom that this applies to, but maybe if you're watching the live stream or you're watching after the fact, if there's anyone here who wasn't here for yesterday's class, which is Microsoft Word Part 1, the basics, still welcome. You're good to go as long as you know just a little bit about getting around in Word. We're not going to talk about the very basics of Word today because that was yesterday's class. But as long as you're good with a lot of the basics, or if you were here for yesterday's class, you're great. You're gonna be able to jump right into this. So again, ask any questions you have as we go along. Let's dive in and get it rolling. So what I've got, I went ahead and opened this up in the set of example files that I linked to a moment ago. We have a document called desertflowers.docx, and that's basically all that is it's the first chapter or the introduction from a public domain book that was published by the Park Service, decades ago, about flowers of the Southwest deserts, as it says there. So that's the document we're going to be playing around with today, and so just so that you know what you're looking at, basically. I've got it open, and at the top we've got our little cover art. And then further on down here, we have the rest of the text. Let me actually zoom in a smidge just because that'll make it easier on us. Okay, so we've got our title up here. We've got our author and illustrator credited. And then down here is the actual text itself. We've got a section here called How to Use This Booklet. And then when I scroll down a little further, there's another section called Plant Names with a little subtitle, Be Serious About Plant Names, but Not Too Serious. Scroll down a little further, we have another section called The Desert what and where is it? But if we're looking at this at a glance or we're scrolling through quickly, it might actually be hard to sort of distinguish where those various sections are because if you look at the text here, it's formatted in exactly the same way as the body of the document. So, so I've got, so where it says how to use this booklet, it's exactly the same as when you go down and you see this, or it looks exactly the same as the paragraphs that are following it. Again, kind of like we had with the lists yesterday. It's almost like I started to write a paragraph and then I just gave up or forgot. So we want to kind of fix this and set this heading apart visually from the rest of the document. That makes sense not only because it's a different type of thing, but it just gives sort of signposts for my readers so that they can tell where they are in the document. And it makes it look nice and polished as well. So what I'm going to do in order to make that change is I'm going to select the text right here. So if anybody forgot after yesterday, I'll just move my mouse over here, hold down on the mouse button and drag over to the left until I get this text selected. Then what I'm going to do is come up to the top here in this styles area. Now, make sure you're on the home tab, of course. If you don't see these little options here, then you'll want to click home up there at the top, and you should see that. I'm going to come over here to styles and click on where it says heading 1. Excuse me. And when I click on that, then I get some big changes with this heading here. First of all, of course, the rest of the text is Times New Roman as the font, 12 point as the size, and there's no other formatting really. It's aligned to the left. There's no bold, italics, any of that sort of thing. But when I select this and I change it to the heading 1 style by clicking this style button, or by clicking the heading 1 button up here, what that does is it changes it from, it keeps it Times New Roman, but it makes it 24 point size instead of just 12. It makes it bold. It centers it. It adds some extra spacing around this. And actually, it adds this weird little arrow that appears when I mouse over it. We'll come back to that arrow in a sec. But for now, we've got our heading, and that's going to help our audience distinguish like where the where this section of the text begins. If I keep scrolling down, there's plant names. Let's go ahead and make that a heading 2. So I'm gonna, there's also a little space out here. I'm gonna just backspace that so that way we don't have that extra sort of trailing space. I'm gonna select the text and click heading 1 on that one as well. Let's see, the desert, what and where is it? And I'll just keep going through and I'll go ahead and get all of these headings set up this way. Now, if you're in the middle of writing a document, or if you know about this before you start writing your document, then you won't have to go through and look for all these headings one by one. Rather than doing that, as you go along, you can just add them. I'll show you how that works in just a second. There we go. There's my last heading, acknowledgements. So if I wanted another section after this, hit enter on my keyboard, and then I'm just going to come up here and click heading 1. It's very similar to how we did how we changed the font formatting yesterday, when we added bold or italics or whatever. Rather than clicking all of these things, I'm just going to click heading 1. And this time I'm going to go type the name of my section there, press enter on my keyboard, and then it comes down, it gives me another heading 1. I don't want that. I'm going to come back up here and click normal. And there we go. Beautiful. So now I have a whole new section here. What this does for you, in addition to the readability things that I was talking about earlier, like making it easy for your audience to get around in your document and know where they are, kind of have signposts and so forth. In addition to that, another useful thing that this does is it kind of allows you to, it allows you to use consistent styling throughout without having to remember a whole bunch of stuff. So if I were doing this manually, you could do it manually for sure. So, you would just, if you wanted to do it manually, you could come down here and say like, okay, still Times New Roman, but we'll go with 24 and bold, and we'll center it. And I could do that. But if I do it this way, what happens is I have to remember all that stuff every time. And to be honest with you, the only reason I remembered all those settings is because I've taught this class several times before. And so rather than having to remember all that stuff, all of it sort of grouped together, and it can be applied in one click by using these styles up here. And that's really handy, not only just mentally, like you don't have to worry about remembering it, but it helps with consistency. So if you forget one piece of that, you don't have one heading that stands out because it looks wrong compared with the others. And you also don't have a, and you're also like, and so that just makes it a whole lot easier. Consistency is super important, particularly if you're writing a document for a professional purpose. Making everything look consistent is kind of a big deal. It makes a big difference in terms of how you're perceived and things like that. So having something that makes it easy to be consistent is amazing. Okay, so let's talk about some of the other styles that we could use here. For one thing, okay, we've got this plant names. Be serious about plant names, but not too serious. Rather than leave this as it is, this is, as I said, kind of a subtitle for this particular section of the document. So if I've got it selected and, so if I've got it down here and then I'm like, so if I need something like that, again, I need to visually set it apart from the rest of my document. Otherwise, people are going to be like, what's that? It's going to kind of bump them out a little bit of reading the content. So up here at the top, none of the stuff that I have here really applies. We don't want it to be normal, so it blends in with the rest. No spacing is a style that basically is just cutting down the spacing, and it looks like it's changing it to a different font. That's a little odd, but whatever. And it's not a heading because this is not, it's like a subtitle for a heading. So I could come down here. I do have a subtitle option. So if I wanted to do that, I could. That looks all right. Or I could do something like subtle emphasis. That's a good one. Again, it's changing the font. So I've got Calibri instead of Times New Roman. And it's in italics, which kind of makes it look more like, oh, okay, this is something else. It's not just part of the text that's been italicized. So that could really work. Let's see. So we've also got up here at the top our title. So I'm going to select this here. And so as you can see with these styles, by the way, I've got a few that I have room for right here at the top. And then I can click this down arrow. See how it says row 1 of 5 below my mouse. I can click this down arrow to kind of like move down and see a different group of styles, or another 5 styles, basically. Or the easier way to do it, I find usually, is to click this button here, the More button. It's got a line and an arrow on it. When I click on that, what it's going to do is just give me a little drop-down menu with all of the different options so that I can find one. And sure enough, there's a title right there. I'll click on that. And then I've got my author and illustrator here. I'm going to come through. We could do, let's do intense emphasis. That seems like a good way to go. Or strong. Yeah, that's good. Great. Okay, so now we've got we've got our title, we've got our author and illustrator information, and we've got all our headings here. If I wanted to make sort of a subheading, like a subsection underneath one of these sections, then I can also do that too. So let's see, I'll find here's a good one. I'll just find a spot like here. And I'll go ahead and hit enter. And I could give my subsection a name. I could select it and go heading 2. So the way these headings work, or these heading styles work, they do need to be used in a specific way. You can change what the styles are. We'll talk about that in a second. But you do kind of want to use them in a specific order for reasons that we'll talk about in just a second. So for your kind of highest level sections, the sections that are like the sections that are sort of the main sections of your document, you want to use heading 1. And then subsections inside of those main sections, you want to use heading 2. The subsections are heading 3, and so on and so forth, all the way down to 6. Like I said, if you don't like the way that those styles work exactly, if you want to change them, I'll show you how we can do that in just a moment. But marking them as heading 1, heading 2, heading 3 is kind of important. Okay, so we've got that. Let's go ahead and, well, let's take a look at why that is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and click on the Find button here at the top. It's a little magnifying glass. Click on that, and it slides out what's called the Navigation Pane. So, oh, I had something selected there, so it searched for it. That's unusual. There we go. Okay. So the way that this Navigation Pane works, one of the, kind of the primary thing that it does is it gives you the ability to search for a word inside of your document. So if I click on that and then I type in, cactus, there we go. I've got three instances of the word cactus in my document. So I can find any of these, click on them to go right there. If I want to, by the way, I can even do a replace. If I click on that, then it's actually gonna grab whatever word I typed in the search, and I can replace it with super cactus. And what I can do is I'll hit find next, and that'll find each instance of the word. And then if I find one that I want to replace, I'll just click replace. Or if I want to replace all of the instances of the word cactus in my document, then I can hit replace all. Now in this case, it's kind of going to be a little weird because I changed. Oh, okay, good. All right, it goes from wherever your selection or your cursor is. So the fact that I had super cactus selected up there at the top once I replaced it meant that it was searching through just the remainder of the document. There's a weird thing there because I had replaced cactus with super cactus in one instance. it would probably, if I hit yes to continue searching from the beginning, it would go back and replace cactus inside of super cactus with super cactus. So I'd actually have super cactus. But as long as I hit no, I'm going to be able to avoid that. And you do have a replace all where it's like, oh yeah, I spelled this person's name wrong throughout the whole document. I just hit replace all and replace every instance of that person's name with the correct version. So that's kind of handy. Anyway, so back to my navigation pane, I've got the result, or, I can search for specific words inside or phrases inside of my document. I can click on the pages thing here to see a little preview of each page of my document, and I can click to go directly to a specific page if I want to. That's kind of handy. And then finally, we have our headings tab here. When I click on that, I can see actually kind of an outline of my document. Because I marked each of these section headings as heading 1, heading 1, heading 1, heading 1, heading 1, heading 2, heading 1, heading 1, Word now knows that that's not just big text, it's a heading. And so I can use this to navigate directly to a specific spot in my document. If I want to see the acknowledgements, I just click on that and it scrolls right down to it. So that's really handy because then I don't have to scroll manually through the whole document. I can just go to exactly the spot I need to visit. Another thing that these headings do that helps you navigate a little bit is you can actually collapse specific sections to get them out of your way temporarily. So I'll go ahead and close this navigation pane by clicking the X. And you'll see, okay, I have this section, National Parks and Monuments as Wildflower Sanctuaries. Let's say that I'm done with that section. I've got it. It's all edited. Everything's good to go. I don't need to make any changes to it. This one's good. But I'm still working on the parts of the document that are around it. What I can do is come up here next to that, click on the little arrow to hide it. And then I get, and now the whole section collapses, and here's the desert plants section right here. So if I need to jump quickly from the section before, the desert, what and where is it, to desert plants, all I need to do is scroll past 2 big lines of text, and that's it. So I can collapse all that down to kind of focus on the part of the document that I'm working on, or I can collapse the ones that I'm finished with so I don't have to worry about it. Or I can collapse ones where I'm like, I got to come back to that later, but I kind of need it out of my view right now. All of those are ways that you could use this collapsing option to get your document squared away and be able to navigate more easily as you're writing and editing. If I click it again, then it's going to expand it back out, and I can see the whole section and edit it just as I did before. You can even, by the way, we're not going to go into this just because we have other things to cover in the class, but you can even use these headings to automatically generate a table of contents for your document. And that's done using the references tab. There's like a table of contents button right here. You click on it with your cursor wherever you want the table to be, and it'll show up there. And you can just people can hold control or command while clicking to go directly to that section in your document. Or if you make a PDF version or something like that, ultimately, then it should turn into a link that takes you to the right spot. So that's pretty, and absolute worst case scenario. Well, not worst case scenario, but it's not very fancy. But if you were printing it out, then you have a table of contents there, and people can know, okay, if I go to page 5 or whatever, I'll see this section and I can read it. So that's those. Let's go ahead and talk about how to change these styles. So there are a few different ways to do this. One of those ways is just by making the changes in your document. So let's say how to use this booklet. Let's say that I want this to be oh, I don't know. I want it to be blue. I'm going to select the text and I'm going to come up here. There's my A with the red swatch next or underneath it. I'm going to click the drop down arrow next to that. And I'm going to find a nice blue that I like. There we go. All right. So now I have blue. I have a blue header here, but that hasn't changed the rest of this. What I can do though is while I've got my cursor in here or while I have the header selected, I can come up here to the top to the heading 1 style, right click on it, and I can click update heading 1 to match selection. When I do, dun, 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 every single header that is set up as heading 1 is now, is now blue. So I can make those changes inside the document and then kind of distribute them to the rest of the text with that same style. Once you click update name of style to match selection, then every single piece of text that you use that style for will then update to match. That's really cool because and that's another nice thing about this styles system is that once you've got is that you're not stuck with the styles that with the style you originally started with. If you decide, oh, I need this text to be a little smaller, or it really should be italic, or maybe I should change the color or whatever, then you can just make that change in one place and have it populate to all of the different places that you use that same style, so that again, you stay consistent and save yourself some work. Another way that you can do this is you can come up to the top and let's see, which one did we do? So we used strong for this one. I'm going to right click on the strong style here, and I'm going to click modify. When I do that, it gives me this dialog box right here. I can change the name of the style. I can change what style it might be based on so that I have kind of a starting place. And then I can change these formatting options here. So if I wanted it to be a different font, and down here where it says automatic, let's make it green. And so I can change these. You've got your alignment options here, your spacing and so forth. And then if I click format, I've got a bunch of additional options here. Because this is based on the default paragraph font, I can't make tons of, that I don't have all of the possible options for this strong style, but you can, if you're starting from scratch or if you're starting on a style that's not necessarily based on another one, then you can make any of these changes you want, like the alignment or the line spacing, and all of these things here. So you can make those changes. There's a thing down here that says only in this document or new documents based on this template. If you choose that new documents based on this template, then you're making a permanent change to the setup in Word, so that when you open a new when you start a new document in Word, these styles will apply as long as all your settings are the same. We'll talk about a little bit more of that as we move forward, but as long as you keep it on only in this document, then it's going to be localized to just this particular file that you're working with at the moment. I'll click OK, and there you have it. So now, anytime that the strong style is used rather than the previous font and the previous color, it's going to look like this. So another thing that you can do is you can create a style. So if you are like, none of these really describe what I want to do with this particular, in this particular situation, you click create a style, and then it's going to, you're going to name it and click modify, and you can change all of the settings with essentially the same dialog box we just saw to be exactly the way you want it to be. There's a clear formatting, which basically will remove all of the formats from it, just kind of like we did with this A with the eraser over here. And then this apply styles, you can kind of come through and select different pieces of text that that you want to apply a certain style to. So that way you don't have to go back up and find it and click it and then go find some more text and then go back up again and so forth. Okay, cool. So that's styles, but there's more to the story than just that. In addition to styles, this whole group of styles that we have up here is what's called a style set. And to look at those, we're going to go over to the Design tab up at the top. Depending on the version of Word you're using, the Design tab might be called something slightly different, but it won't be something terribly different. And you should see something like this. So what we've got is this is a list of style sets, different style set options. When I say style sets, all I'm talking about is a collection of these styles right here. Usually almost the same exact ones. And a handy feature of that is, if you come over here, let's say I want to give a different look for this document, rather than having to go in and change each one of these styles to go with the new look. Instead, what I can do is come over here on the Design tab and just click on a different style set. Let's see, this one I chose is called Centered. When I click on it, if I scroll down, okay, now my title is inside of these two little lines here. The font has changed. Let's see, that's Calibri Light for the headings. And the color has changed. For the strong style, we have Calibri rather than Calibri Light. And 10.5 as the size, and it's bold, and so on and so forth. As we scroll down, we'll see more and more. So subtle emphasis is also gray and looks like it's using Calibri as the font, and so on and so forth. So your style sets are basically just different variations that you can apply really easily to your document to give it a different look and feel. You can, once you make changes to your document or, to your styles, you can actually click Save as a new style set. And so you can save, if you've got a particular setup that you really, really like, save it as a style set. And then and then you can find it anytime you want on that, as long as you're using Word on that same computer. There's reset to the default style set. So if you're like, oh, I've made too many changes, it looks weird now, then you've got that. So, so you can get it. You can get all your styles exactly the way you want them, and you can save them for future use, which is really, really cool. But then each style set is actually part of a larger group of things, and that is themes. So when I click on the little drop-down arrow next to themes, look through here. I don't know which theme we're using actually right at this moment, but there are a bunch of sets of themes. So let's see. I'll choose gallery this time. Now that I've chosen that, you'll notice, let's see. Well, I'll undo this really quick so y'all can see. So right now, when I look at this, it looks like we are just using the Office, like the default style set here. So you'll notice I have like blue, orange, gray, yellow, green, or blue and green here. And I also see some of those colors over here on the right. If I click on fonts, I see, well, I guess we'll talk about that in a sec. But basically, once I go in and change themes, so if I go to a gallery, for example, suddenly you'll see I have a whole new collection of style sets here. Not only that, but my colors have changed. So I'm now using a different color scheme. I've got this gray, dark gray, light gray, red, and purple, or I don't know, pinkish. I guess that's magenta. I've got, and then my fonts have changed as well. Rather than Calibri and Calibri Light, I now have, let's see, Gill Sans MT for my body text, Gill Sans MT for my header as well. Okay, it looks like we're sticking with that particular font. But basically that's going to, all my fonts have changed to match that, basically. So basically what a theme is a collection of style sets and also a set of settings in these area, in this area over here. So a color scheme like this, a set of fonts. So one particular font for headers and one particular font for kind of regular or body text, a specific setting as far as paragraph spacing, and possibly specific effects settings. So certain things, particularly if you insert like shapes and things like that into your document, it can look like glass, or it can be a little grungy, or it can, have a drop shadow behind it and so forth. So you can, so basically whatever you set for these settings, that makes up a theme. And you can actually even come over here and click Save Current Theme, and it'll be your own specific style. That's really good for, like, say, for example, you have, you work for a company where you have specific branding guidelines. You need to use these fonts in this situation, and these are our brand colors, and so on and so forth. You can make a theme inside of Word that will use specifically those settings, and that way, whenever you create a document without almost any effort, you'll be able to match those branding guidelines exactly and make it look just the way you want it to look. Or there are a whole host of ways that you could do that. But basically that's the idea, is you can save all of these settings and then you can get back to them at any point. Again, consistency. You can even have, I probably wouldn't click this right now if I were you, but you even have a button that says set as default. So you can set a specific theme and style set as the default look for any new document you create on this computer moving forward. That's pretty cool. So that's styles and style sets and themes. What questions do y'all have about that before we move on to the next thing? Cool. If you're in the middle of typing something, keep typing it, and we'll tackle it as soon as I see it. Let's talk a little bit about using the collaboration and review tools that Word has built in. So obviously, a lot of times you're writing a document and it's just you writing the document, and and once you're done, you're going to send it to the people who need it, and that's all. But sometimes you're going to be putting something out there a little more, you're going to be putting something a little further out there. Maybe it's going to be published. Maybe it's going to be, going to customers or something, or maybe it's just something that where you need some feedback from an editor of some sort. In those situations, Word has these tools that you can use for that. So what I'm going to do is come over here and click on the Review tab up at the top. And that will take me to this situation right here. It'll change these tools down in the ribbon to our sort of review and collaboration tools. So we're not going to spend much time on it, but I do want to draw your attention briefly over here. There's the editor, or in previous versions of Word, they'll call it like spelling and grammar check or spell check. Obviously, that can check for misspelled words. It's not perfect, particularly with proper nouns or less common names, or if you're writing a fantasy novel, it's probably going to mark all of your character names as misspelled. And it's still, the grammar check is still done by a computer. It's not a human being that's checking your work, obviously. And so it can definitely make mistakes in understanding your intent in writing what exactly you wrote. So you want to take that advice with a grain of salt, but sometimes it's useful in, say, eliminating redundant phrases or things like that. Can be pretty handy. There's also a thesaurus here. If you if you find yourself overusing a particular word, then the thesaurus can help you out and give you some suggestions of replacements that might work. Don't get too wild with it. There's a particular scene from Friends that I'm thinking about, something saying they have big hearts, but after running through the computer's thesaurus, it ends up with like enlarged aortic chambers or something like that. Things like that can really happen. So make sure that you don't that you use that sparingly. And then there's the word count. So if you click on that, you can see a basic word count down here. But if you click on that, you can also see, and you can see your page count down there. But you can also see, in addition to just pages and words, the number of characters, not including spaces, the number of characters including spaces, the number of paragraphs, and the number of lines in your document. So depending on what you're doing, all of that stuff can be useful information. Okay. Oh, and they do have translation features here. Again, be careful with that. If you want to look professional in another language, hire a human translator who's fluent in that language, because it's a little dicey when you have the computer do it. So continuing on over here, we have our review and collaboration tools. So if I'm looking through a document and if I'm collaborating with someone on a document or I'm editing for them, one thing that I have access to is this comment tool right here. So I'm going to come down, let's say, this particular sentence. I'll select this with my mouse, come up here and click on where it says new comment. And when I do, it gives me this little, I should probably zoom out just a smidge so you can see a little better. It gives me this little side thing that, it's a blank comment. So I can, what I can do, it'll show my name, whatever's set as my name on either this computer or in the settings of Word. But it's going to give me, or it's going to show my name, and then and then down below I can type my message. Should we end the paragraph on this sentence? Question mark. Okay. So I've given my feedback. I don't know whether that would be useful feedback for real or not, but let's pretend that it is useful feedback. I've now got a comment in here. If I scroll down a little bit more, throw in another one. There we go. And put one more. And wherever my cursor is, the little blinking line, that's where the, or my selection, that's where the comment will appear. And if I have something selected, like it did towards the top there, then, when I move over the comment, this whole sentence is, whatever I had selected at the time that I created the comment, that's going to be highlighted. So I can, I could pick two sentences out of the middle of a paragraph and say, like, maybe you should switch these sentences or whatever. And when the person gets it back from me with that comment, it'll be sort of highlighted. So that is, so those are comments. Basically, if you're sending copies of a document back and forth in email, then you can put comments in there, and when you save your changes in the document, everybody else who receives it will also see those comments, and they'll be able to respond to them and take some action. If your document is stored online on something like Microsoft OneDrive or Microsoft SharePoint, then multiple people will be able to open the document all at once, or as they have the opportunity, and look at the comments and edit it directly online, which is really nice sometimes. So that is comments, and we'll talk. Well, actually, we'll talk about the rest of how to deal with comments here in a sec. Another feedback and editorial tool that you have at your disposal is what's called change tracking. If I come up here to the top, there's a button here that is labeled track changes. If I click on this little icon, it will shade in, and change tracking is now on. If I click instead on the name track changes or the little drop down arrow, then I would just want to click track changes in this menu, and that will do it. You can also, by the way, lock change tracking so that people can make all the edits to the document they want, but there's a password so that they can't turn change tracking off. And that way you don't lose the original version of the document to unauthorized or non-final changes. But let me show you how this change tracking works. So I click the little button, or I click track changes in the menu, and now nothing seems to have happened at first. But if I come down here and I start to make edits, then you'll start to see a little bit of a difference here. And let's see what else. Okay, there we go. All right, there we have it. Okay, so I made several changes, and let's see. I'll go ahead and delete a list item from here as well. Oh, that's weird. See, sometimes it doesn't do what you expect it to do, but that's okay. How odd. Maybe it'll just, okay, whatever. Anyway, okay, so I've done that. Now what I need to do is, let's say that I am now the original author of the document. I've gotten it back from my editor who's made all those changes that I just made and added comments over here on the side. Now what I can do as the original author or whoever's making the final decisions about the editorial, whoever's doing the final edit before it goes out, more or less. As that person, I'm going to look through the document and I can't really see very much where the changes have been made. But actually, when I look over here, I've got this red line. You probably noticed that as I was making my little edits there. Of course, I also have these comments. So I can scroll through and kind of like look for those things. Or I can actually follow a little process that Word has built into it. So what I'm going to do is click come up to the top of the document, put my cursor there, and I'm just going to click next right here. What that's going to do first is take me to this comment right here. Should we end the paragraph on this sentence? And I have the option to either reply or resolve the comment. So I'm like, yes, we definitely should end the paragraph on this sentence, then I can click resolve. And what it's going to do is kind of gray it out like this so that the comment is still there and I can still look back on it and whoever else I'm collaborating with can still look back and see it. But I know that I've kind of taken that feedback on board and maybe I did something about it, or maybe I was, or maybe I felt pretty strongly about the original version and wanted to keep it. But this way I kind of have a record of like, oh, okay, there it is. And I can reopen to undo that. Or if I'm going back and forth, either online or even in email, I can add a reply to this comment and I can say like, I think it makes sense. What don't you like about it? Question mark. And so we can have a little conversation there to kind of sort that out. I also have the ability, if I right click on the comment, I can just, rather than marking it as resolved, I can just delete it outright. So I'll click on it, right click on it and click delete comment right here. And that gets it completely out of the way. So we've dealt with that comment. I'll mark it as resolved and I'll hit next. That takes me to another comment. This one, I'm like, oh, that seems like it was maybe just a mistake. So I'm just going to right click on that one and I am going to go ahead and delete it. I'll click next again. And now I get this right here. So this is the sentence that I added to this paragraph. If I click the little red line over here, notice up here at the top right now, it says simple markup. When I click the red line, it switches to all markup, which you can also do by clicking this drop-down box and selecting all markup from there. And what that's going to do, in this case, it's just going to highlight this text in red. So, and underline it. So now I know by that, okay, this is something that was added to the document. And then down here, simple markup shows me And how would we recognize one if we saw it? All markup shows me, okay, the word may was deleted and the word would was added. The word when was deleted and the word if was added. And then the EE in C was deleted and AW was added after that. So each of these, even though I actually did that in one fell swoop, so I just selected the word may and I typed would in instead. Even though that was all done in one, it's actually two separate edits as far as word is concerned. This is just one because it was just added in. So let's take each of these in turn. I'll go next. And then for this edit, if I'm like, okay, I'm good with that sentence being here, then I can come up here and I can click accept to go, okay, yeah, that's good. If I've got, if I want, well, let's say that I want to keep the word may rather than would. I'm going to click reject right here. What that's going to do, that will reject the deletion of the word may. But now I have may would, and if I switch back to simple markup, how may would we recognize one? I also have to go to the would and either click accept or reject on that. So I'm going to reject that as well. But I'm going to accept these four. So deleting if, or when, adding if. Deleting EE, adding AW. You can also do this by right-clicking on the particular edit. So I'm going to right-click here, and I can click accept insertion or reject insertion. Accept, and there we go. And you'll notice that it's given me it's automatically generated some additional comments over here too, to tell me exactly what happened when those weird formatting things happened to my list. And again, I can either accept or reject those formatting changes right here. So I can keep going through there. If I want to make some changes that are going to be final, but I don't necessarily need them to be tracked changes that someone else will review, I can turn off change tracking. The tracked changes are still saved here. So like if I switch back to simple markup, the document will just look pretty much like it did before. Whoops. But but any changes that I make are permanent. So if I go in here, and then I turn on, you'll notice there's no red line there over next to this. And if I were to turn on all markup, you won't see any red in that specific spot because that was a permanent change since I made it while change tracking was off. And we could go through and do the rest of that, but we don't really need to. So any questions about any of that stuff before we move on to, I guess if you keep going through and you either accept or reject all the changes, then eventually it'll say like there are no more changes to be reviewed or whatever. And then you can, and then essentially you have a final version of your document. So yeah, are there any questions about that before we move into the mail merges? While you're thinking about that or typing your questions, someone asked for the link where they can go back and see the rest of this because they missed part of the class. So I'm gonna grab that for you really quick. Okay, and that person disappeared. So, I don't know, internet connection troubles, perhaps. All right. But that is the link to the YouTube channel where you can rewatch this later and, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Why not? We got a lot of cool stuff there while you're at it. I'll give just a moment or two more while I drink some more of my water for folks to type questions if they have them, and then we'll dive into mail merges. All right, cool. Well, if you are still typing or if you think of something else, any other question you have, let me know and we'll be good. All right, so let me get back over to Word here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open up one of the other files that's in the set of example files that you, if you're following along, you would have downloaded at the beginning of class. And so in that folder is a document called mailmerge.docx. Go ahead and open that up. And that's the document that we'll be using for the remainder of the class here. Let me change my screen share so that it's going to show that window. There we go. Okay, great. All right, so we've got our mail merge document pulled up here. This is a letter to some customers. It says, "Dear customer, we're glad you become a customer with us this year. We'd love to offer you $20 off on your next order with us. Just use the offer code US20 on our website when placing your order." And blah, 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 blah. After a while, it just turns into the first couple of paragraphs of War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, just so I could fill out the letter and make it look a little longer. And then at the end, we have, "Sincerely, Jojo, your Splat Ink sales associate." So what we want to do here is, for this example, we want to take this letter, which is pretty generic, and make it into, and create versions of the letter that are specifically for, a version of the letter that's specifically for each recipient that's going to be getting it. And to do that, we're going to use a mail merge. So to start out, let's click on the Mailings tab up here at the top. With the Mailings tab, we're going to, or now in the Mailings tab, basically, so when we create a mail merge, here's what we're going to do. We've got a set of data that we're going to be working with, which is, in this case, a spreadsheet that I included with the example files that you would have downloaded. And so the spreadsheet has a bunch of customer information from fake customers. Don't try to contact any of these people. They don't exist. And for the most part, their addresses and towns are not real either. Oh, the person who asked for the link is back. Let me go ahead and re-add that to the chat just in case. Okay, cool. All right. So we've got our, so basically in order to personalize this, we've got our data and we're going to take the data, or we're going to take the letter and we're going to basically create blanks inside it called merge tags. And then those merge tags are going to be replaced by specific information for each recipient when we finish the mail merge. So let's get it rolling. First, we need to bring in the data that we're going to be using to personalize the letter. So up at the top, we are doing this as a letter, but you also have the ability to use a mail merge to print envelopes with people's addresses and so forth, and to print mailing labels if you're just using plain envelopes. Or any other, as it says down there, you can choose from popular sizes and specialty labels like CD, DVD labels. So, you might be making a label for something other than a letter, in which case that's useful. Okay, so here under where it says Start Mail Merge, I'm going to click on that and it gives me a drop-down menu. Now, we don't actually need to do anything in the drop-down menu this time because we are doing a mail merge for a letter. But you also have the ability to do a mail merge for email messages. Now, this is not as useful as you would think, unfortunately. In order to do this with an email message, you do have to be using the desktop version of Microsoft Outlook. In other words, the Outlook program installed on your computer. If you aren't using the Outlook program, even if you have Outlook.com or Microsoft Office 365 or something, and use the web Outlook for that, that won't work. You have to actually use the program, the Outlook program, in order to make this work properly. It's kind of a bummer, but what can you do? So you can also, it also has envelopes and labels, and it has the ability to create a directory of people, which could be handy in some situations as well. So we're going to leave it on letters, and then we're going to come over here and click on Select Recipients. When I click on that, I have the option to type a new list, use an existing list, or choose from Outlook contacts. If you use Outlook to keep up with all of your contacts, then that would be useful. But most folks don't do that. I actually use the Outlook program like every day that I'm working, at least. And I've probably stored a grand total of 3 contacts in there. So that's not super common. But if you do happen to use it to keep up with your contacts, then that option's for you. Type a new list. Obviously, that's not super convenient because the whole point of the mail merge is to make it easier on us, and we don't want to have to type all that information. Although it still would make it a little more useful. Really, what we want to do most of the time is use an existing list. So I'll click on that, and it's going to take me into this. I've got in the Documents folder on my computer, there's a folder called My Data Sources, and it has these 2 kind of placeholder files in it. If you select one of these, then you could use that to connect to, rather than using a file on your computer, you can connect to different types of databases. So, you're welcome. You can connect to different types of databases, either online, or if you have a Microsoft Access database with the information that you need, things like that. So that's what those are for, but that's a lot more complicated than what we're going to be doing. We're just going to be using a spreadsheet. So I'm going to go back to the desktop, which is where I stored my Word Part 2 files. Click on Word Part 2. And then I have this list of, and then I have my files here, including a file called customerorders.xlsx. That's an Excel workbook that has the customer information in it that I want to be using. So I'm going to double click on that, or click it and click open to use that particular file. Okay, so there's a few things here that it gives you as options. What you want to do is choose the one that says order list here. If you're creating the worksheet, or if you're creating the data from scratch, you're not going to have all these options. You might have something and then something filter database. Just choose the something in most cases without the filter database. In this case, it's going to be the order list. And then there's a checkbox here that says first row of data contains column headers. In this particular case, that's true. When we look at our data set, it does have column headers on the first row, and then all of the data after that is the actual information for our customers. But your data set might not have that. So just look and figure it out one way or another. I'll click OK. And now that's loaded up. You'll notice not a whole lot has changed, but I have a few additional options here that I can use. Really quickly, I'm going to show you what's inside of that file, just so you can have that in your mind, because that sometimes is pretty useful information. Let me switch my screen share. Okay, so this is the file. We have basically what we have is a bunch of these fake orders from fake people to our fake company. Looks like we have about 399 orders altogether. And so we can see there's this column A is the order number, column B is the date the order was placed, column C is the amount they paid for the order, the number of items that were included. We have the street address, the city, state or province, zip code, the country, which is going to be either Canada or the US in this particular data set, a first name, a last name, an email address, and a phone number, and finally, which salesperson in the company sold them their order. So that's what that data set looks like that we're working with, just so that you have that in your mind of like, oh yeah, okay, it's arranged like this. Okay, I'm going to exit that though, because we don't need it. And then I'm going to switch back to the Word window. Beautiful. Okay, so inside of back in our Word window, let's go ahead and start personalizing this. So the first thing I'm going to do, I've got kind of an example address here. I'm just going to click and put my cursor somewhere in that address. And I'm going to just backspace until I can get rid of it. And so I've got one space between my cursor here, or one line's worth of space between my cursor here and the date. We're going to pretend that the date that we're sending this letter is September 20th, 2020. That'll be important information a little later, but that's why I put that there. Okay, so I've got my cursor up there at the top, and now I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to click Address Block at the top in the ribbon. When I click on that, it gives me this Insert Address Block dialog box. And I have several options that I can choose from. Insert recipient's name in this format. So if I want to have the recipient's name, now I could just have the address and no name on there, but usually you're going to have the person's name. So I've got the, I'm leaving that checked. And this basically shows you what type of, like, how their name is going to be written out. So in this case, we've got Joshua Randall Jr. We've also, but if you look up, there are other options. We've got Josh, very, very informal. We've got Josh Randall Jr., Josh Q. Randall Jr., Joshua, Mr. Josh Randall Jr., Mr. Joshua Randall Jr., the Randall family, Josh and Cynthia, Joshua and Cynthia, and so on and so forth. So there are a bunch of different sort of permutations. You know, do you want to use nicknames, or do you want to use the full name? Do you want to use the last name or not? Do you want to add suffixes or titles, that sort of thing? And so depending on what kind of letter you're writing, you can make that choice. Now, in this case, things like suffixes like junior or, or a title like Mr., we don't have that information in our data set. So, it won't really, having that junior there won't really do anything. But if we had something like that, then we could, then we could choose whether to use it or not. Down here where it says insert postal address, the options are never include the country or region in the address, always include the country or region in the address, only include the country or region if different than United States. Considering we would be mailing it from the United States, but some of the customers are in Canada, this option makes the most sense. And then it says format address according to the destination country / region. That's just, that seems like an obvious yes, because if we don't use that option, then we're going to have, then our letter might not get there. So pretty important to have that, pretty important to have that turned on, I would say. Then we get a preview over here. So we can see we have Azia Fikes, Falcon Crest 41837. That's not right. That's probably not gonna get there. So we need to adjust this. Down here it says correct problems, and we can click match fields to correct the problems. So basically, when Excel is looking at our workbook there, or when Word, is looking at our Excel file that we brought in, it's trying to figure out what kind of information is in each column. And for some of that, it's done a good job and it's figured it out. For some of those columns, it has not done a good job and it has not figured it out. And so, so we need to give it some help. So here under first name, it found a column that was labeled first, and it figured, oh, that might be the first name. And it was right about that. Great. It found another column labeled last, and it was like, that's probably the last name, isn't it? Yep, you are right on again. And there's some other stuff here. Technically, it says this is required, but not all of this stuff is required, and we don't have all this stuff. City, it found zip code, it found country, it found state, who we need this to match up. So when I click on state, it says not matched here in parentheses. I'm going to go down and click state / province, because that's the heading of the column that had that information in it. And then address 1, that's going to be our street address, or just street, as I put in the Excel file. So I'll click on that, and now that's matched up too. We could go through and find other things if we wanted, but that's all of it. If you have a file or some other, or you're using a database or something that you use regularly for these sorts of mail merges, then you do have the option of remember this matching for this set of data sources on this computer. I'm not going to use that because I'm going to teach this class again, and I need to show them what I just showed you. But if you have a file that or a database that you're using regularly for a mail merge, then you may want to use that checkbox and save yourself some trouble. I'll click OK. And then now we can look at the address and see Azia Fikes, 3511 Old Ramp, Falcon Crest, Kentucky, 41837. Beautiful. We got it. I'll click OK. And now we have our merge tag right here. Or merge field, I guess is what Word calls it. Which is address block. So it's address block inside of a couple of sets of angle brackets. Okay, so down here we have Dear Customer. Obviously that's super duper generic, so I'm going to get rid of that too. We're going to replace that by clicking greeting line. So we can change our format, so we can say dear or to or nothing. We can just use the person's name, so-and-so, comma, or whatever. We can choose the format for the name, just like we did in the other box. And we can choose whether to use a comma, a colon, or none. And we can also choose a default greeting in case the recipient's name is invalid. So we could say, dear sir or madam, or to whom it may concern, or whatever. And then again, it gives us a preview just in case our names aren't set up properly. We can we can we can go back into match fields and work on it some more. I'll click OK. And now we have greeting line inside double angle brackets there. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do to personalize this, it says in the letter, "We're glad you become a customer with us this year." Now, back in the data set, we've got customers who placed their orders in 2020, which again is what the year that we're pretending it is in this example, and customers who placed their orders in 2019, the year before. And so what we want to do is make sure that Word will not create copies of this letter for customers who ordered last year, because they're not going to be receiving this letter. So I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to click where it says rules. And in the drop-down menu, I'm going to click on skip record if. Under our field name, so this is the column that Word is going to be looking at to determine whether or not that particular person will receive a copy of the letter. And what we want to do is change it to date, because that's the date that they placed their order. And then under comparison, we can do equal, great, or not equal, less than, greater than, less than or equal, or greater than or equal. I'm going to choose less than. And then I'm going to put in 1/1/2020. So if the date is less than or earlier than January 1st, 2020, then it's going to skip that particular record or row on the spreadsheet and not create a personalized version of the letter for that person, or any version of the letter for that matter. I'll click OK. And now we have a merge tag here that says skip record if. Now, this is not going to appear for our recipients at all. And if I were to print it, then it would just be, "We are glad you become a customer with us," over on the left without this. But that tells me, that gives me a reminder that, oh yeah, not everybody on our spreadsheet, in our data set, is going to be receiving this letter. Okay, so another thing that we want to do here, you'll notice, use the offer code US20 on our website when placing your order. As you might imagine, this is that's a US only offer code, and it's in US dollars. But we want to give our Canadian customers a little incentive to come back and give us some more of their business as well. So we're going to make a version of this. Essentially, we're going to make a different version of these two sentences for US recipients versus Canadian recipients. Here's how we're going to do that. First of all, I'm going to select the text, those two sentences right there. And then I'm going to copy the text. So either I can right click on it and click copy, or again, my preference is usually to use the keyboard shortcut for copy, Control C on a Windows computer, or Command C on a Mac. Now that I've copied it, I can head up to rules again, and I can click on if, then, else. And what this does is it creates a rule that will do one thing if it's one way and one thing if it's another way. In this case, what we're going to do is under field name, we're going to choose country, and then we're going to say equal to. We're going to leave that as is. And then we're going to compare it to something. In this case, I'm just going to type US in all caps with no periods or spaces. So just capital U, capital S, because that's how I wrote it in the spreadsheet, either US like that or CA for Canada. And then down here where it says insert this text, I'm going to paste the text that I just copied from the letter. Now, in order to do that, I am going to have to use the keyboard shortcut, because for whatever reason, Word won't let me right click in this box. So on on a Windows computer, which is what I'm using, I'm going to hold Control in the corner of my keyboard and press, while I'm holding Control, press V as in Victor to paste it in. On a Mac, you can do the same thing by holding Command and using V. And again, Command is the key that has the kind of squiggly thing on it that sort of looks like a stove range. Okay, so if they are in the US, if under that country, in that country column, it says US on that particular line, then this is what they're going to see. I'm going to, again, come down here, either use Control V or Command Z to paste where it says otherwise insert this text. And I'm going to change this one to, instead of $20, $25. Whoops. And I'm going to change the offer code from US 20 to CA 25. And so since we only have the US and Canadian customers in our data set, that's going to work just fine. If we had more people, or if we had people from additional countries, it would get trickier. But this works for this particular situation at least. I'll click OK. And there it is. Okay, so it says, just like it did before, we'd love to offer you $20 off your next order with us, blah, 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 blah. But you'll notice when I click on that, that it's kind of shaded in gray there, even though I haven't selected it. And that's to tell me this is actually a place where the mail merge is going into effect. Finally, down here at the bottom, what I'm going to do is where it says sincerely Jojo, Jojo's not a real sales associate with our fake company. And so I'm going to remove Jojo's name. And I'm going to come up here where it says insert merge field. If I click on the icon here, the little button, then it's going to give me this dialog box right here where I can select one of the columns from my data set. Or if I click the drop down arrow or the words insert merge field, then it's going to give me this. Either way, I'm going to click salesperson and it should fill that in. So if you've got the dialog box, click salesperson and then click insert in your case. And now that we've got all of those merge fields in there, all we need to do is double check and then get our letter out there. So a good way to do this is if I click this button that says preview results, then it's going to give me the version of, a version of the letter for each person that I can kind of click through. So Azia Fikes, there's her, there's her version of the letter, and I can see, okay, we've got $20 off, and Sadira was her salesperson. So everything's looking good. Keep clicking through. I can find more and more. I can click find recipient if I want to do a search for a particular person. Here's a Canadian customer, and sure enough, it added the Canadian country to the bottom of the address, and they're getting $25 Canadian off of their order with the Canadian offer code there. So that seems to be working. But if there are specific trouble spots that you might want to look over, then you can use that to figure it out. And then up here at the top, you have finish and merge. And there are, other than the email message one, there are basically two options that you can use here. One is this, edit individual documents. If you were to click on that, what's going to happen is Word will create a new document that includes all of the personalized copies of your merged letter. So each person who's on my list, it's going to make a copy of the letter for them and put it all in one document that I can just scroll through. Page 1 is Azia Fikes, and page 2 is whoever, and page 3 is Abelard, Rickard, and whatever. So I can go through and I can make individual changes to those. It gets rid of the merge fields and it puts the actual data in. So I can tweak that if I directly in the letter if I need to, or I can add additional bits to certain people's letters, a personalized note or whatever, that kind of thing. So I still don't have to create a copy for each individual recipient, but a few recipients where I need to make tweaks, I can basically. Or if I'm like, I don't need to tweak any additional ones, then I can click print documents. And that's just going to send all of the merged versions of the document directly to my printer without me even having to look at it. So, so if I'm like, this is good to go, I'm just gonna click send to printer. It's gonna go to my printer. It's gonna come right out. I'm gonna put it in the folder, put it in the envelope, mail it on. And that's a whole lot easier than having to write an individualized copy. And it's a whole lot nicer than just a letter that says, "Dear customer, we thank you for being vaguely associated with us." And that's about it. What questions do y'all have for me before we wrap it up for today? Someone says, did you say you have to use Outlook to use mail merge? No. If you are trying to, so Word has, so up here at the top, when you click on start mail merge, Word has the option down here where it says email messages. If you were to try to use that option, you do have to use Outlook. Not only do you have to use Outlook, you have to use the actual Outlook program installed on your computer, not the web-based version of Outlook that works in your browser tab. So yeah, if you want to use it for emails, you do have to use Outlook, specifically the Outlook program. Doing it for letters and stuff like that is works just fine. Yeah. Okay. She's asking, she had trouble with Microsoft 365 and was curious if it was because she's on a Mac. I mean, maybe, but like, I mean, there's a whole, there's like a whole team of Mac developers inside of Microsoft that works on that and tries to make it work well. I imagine there are a few things that are like very specifically Windows based that don't work as well on a Mac. Normally everything should work pretty much the same. But yeah, I mean, if you, if you're having problems with it, I mean, it should work the same way as what I showed you on a Mac too. If not, then it might be worth contacting support and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, there are certain things, certain trade-offs and stuff. I mean, Macs are great. I use Windows for the most part personally, but that's partly because I do this job and most people have a Windows computer. Also, if you're having trouble, you need some sort of troubleshooting help with a weird problem. Every so often I do these open lab sessions, which is basically like which is basically kind of a little, when we do it in person, it's like a drop-in session. I have the classroom open over here and folks can come in with their devices and ask questions and stuff. Right now I'm doing virtual open labs. I think the next one is next week, maybe. Yeah, like a week from today, I think. you can register for a little 30-minute time slot, and we'll basically just have a little Zoom meeting and chat about your problem and try to figure it out. So feel free to take advantage of that. That's an option that's open to you. And I'm doing I have 3 of those on the schedule between now and the end of July. One, the one that's coming up, one in at the very beginning of July, and one in like mid-July, I think. And hopefully by September or so, we'll have in-person ones. When I'm doing them in person, I actually do it every week at some point, not a standardized time, because that way different folks with different schedules can attend. But every week at some point. So September, maybe, cross your fingers, and get vaccinated and stuff. Let's see. Any other questions? All right. Oh, also, all of the events for July, my classes for July, the listings for those have gone up on the website. You can check it out if you go to cals.org/tech-classes. And that will get you there. And there's lots of cool stuff coming up. I have a course starting next Wednesday, that's computer programming for absolute beginners. So literally, if you know how to use a mouse and a keyboard and like to read the screen, then this will show you how to write some code. And it's just a really useful skill, actually. And it's very cool to be like, I wrote a computer program, and you will be able to say that by the time you finish that, that first class. I definitely, that's a highlight that's coming up. And we've got all sorts of other stuff through June and July. The link, I'll go ahead and drop that in the chat for you. So it's cals.org/tech-classes, like so. And you can just click on like view and register for classes there. All right. If y'all do think of any questions after the fact, feel free to shoot me those in email. The best email address to use for that is digital@cals.org. And I hope that y'all have a fantastic rest of the day. Thank you so much for joining me. And yeah, I think everybody who is here today was here yesterday. So thank you so much for joining me 2 days in a row. That's awesome. And I hope to see you again soon. Bye. Oh, if my computer will go up.